Good evening, and thank you for joining us. If you want clear, no-nonsense breakdowns of what really happens in Washington and how it affects your life, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now so you never miss an update.
Their health care and their health care costs are going to go up as well.
Well, we'll argue on that one. Senator Sanders.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Bessent, for being here. Help me out here. My understanding is the Trump administration has, I think, 13 billionaires in office right now, leading government agencies. Is that about right, do you think?
I have no idea, Senator.
I think that's what the number is. Do you think it's a coincidence, given the large number of billionaires in the Trump administration, that this particular piece of legislation would provide $235 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2% by expanding the exemptions in the estate tax?
Senator, I will tell you that when the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed, my tax rate went up.
Well, I don't know your exact situation, but I can tell you. Tell me about how many people do you think are in the top 0.2%?
Sorry?
Number of people in the top 0.2% who would benefit from this particular $235 billion tax break.
Well, the top, I know the top 10% is
right.
now paying 7%.
That's not the question. My question is, why do you think at a time of unprecedented income and wealth inequality, when people like yourself economically have never, ever had it so good, why do you think it's a good idea to cut Medicaid for low-income and working-class people by $700 billion to give $235 billion in tax breaks to the very, very, very richest people in this country, perhaps a few hundred families? Please justify that and tell me about that.
Well, Senator, I don't know, but the Democrats had the trifecta, and there was no tax increase or wealth tax on billionaires. You choose.
I'm not talking about a tax.
You chose not
Mr.
to do
Bessent,
that,
I am not talking about a wealth tax. Explain. A few hundred of the wealthiest families in this country, $235 billion tax break. Explain to the American people why you think that's a great idea.
I think that this will increase small businesses substantially. That most small businesses, they are...
Has zero to do with, come on, you're smarter than that. This is the top 0.2%. This is not a mom and pop store. These are multi-billionaires, and the savings go to their kids after they pass away. This is nothing more than a gift to billionaires in this country.
Well, sir, that's just not correct, because the top 10% paid a bigger share of taxes after TCJA.
I'm talking about one provision in this. I don't want to argue with you about taxes in general. One provision, few hundred families, $235 billion in tax breaks. You can't justify that because morally it is totally unjustifiable. Let me ask you another question. If you guys want to cut $1 trillion in Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, the estimate from CBO, I believe, is that over 15 million people lose their health insurance. Yale University and the University of Pennsylvania estimated that when you throw that many low-income and working-class people off of health care, some 50,000 people a year will die. Tell me why you think it's a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and allow 50,000 low-income and working-class people to die unnecessarily?
Senator, first of all, that's overstated by 5.1 million. That is not attributed to this bill. It is simply
It's a combination. That's true.
No. You all had a scheduled expiration of Obamacare subsidies, and you did not extend that when you were in charge. 5.1 million. 1.4 million illegal aliens on Medicaid.
All right, look,
and there are work requirements. And our goal is to get more money to children and mothers.
Really? Your goal is to get more money to children, and working people. Really, come on. Do you know how many people, and I was surprised to hear this, I don't know if you know it or not, how many people lose their jobs every year, quit, or get fired or whatever? Do you have any idea?
Well, there's something called the quits rate, and so when the job market is strong, more people quit.
But yeah, I was surprised that I just researched this. I don't know. Do you happen to know?
I don't know the number.
I was surprised. Would it be shocking to you? It was to me. 20 million people leave their jobs a year. Doesn't shock you, right? It's a big labor force, right?
Yep.
So somebody leaves the job, maybe they move, maybe something happens in their lives, right? We have a lot of transition in the labor market, correct?
Maybe they get a better job.
Right, exactly, maybe they do. Or maybe they have to stay home, their wife gets sick, whatever, we don't know. But 20 million people lose their jobs in a given year, leave their jobs in a given year. Are those people lazy? What happens when I leave my job and maybe I have to move to another state to take care of my ill mother, and I desperately need Medicaid? Am I too lazy now to be able to get Medicaid?
I think that's a mischaracterization of the work requirement.
Really? Well, I'm not quite so sure it is.
Today, a heated exchange in the Senate put a national spotlight on a question that has defined American politics for decades: who government is really working for. During a hearing featuring Treasury nominee Scott Bessent, Senator Bernie Sanders delivered one of the most pointed critiques yet of the Trump administration's economic priorities, and the implications reach far beyond this single moment. At the center of the clash is a proposed tax change buried inside a much larger legislative package. According to independent estimates, this provision would deliver roughly $235 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2% of Americans. We are talking about a few hundred ultra-wealthy families, many of them billionaires, benefiting through expanded estate tax exemptions that primarily take effect after wealth is passed on to heirs. If you want more reporting that breaks down complex policy into plain English, take a second to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep doing this work. Senator Sanders framed the issue in stark terms. He pointed out that the Trump administration includes an unusually high number of billionaires running federal agencies. Whether or not that number is exactly 13, the symbolism was clear. An administration filled with extreme wealth is pushing a tax policy that overwhelmingly benefits people at the very top, while simultaneously proposing massive cuts to social programs relied upon by working-class and low-income Americans. Scott Bessent attempted to shift the conversation by arguing that previous tax cuts increased the share of taxes paid by the top 10%. But Sanders was not discussing the tax system in general. He focused on a single provision, one that applies only to the richest fraction of Americans and has nothing to do with wages, productivity, or small businesses struggling to survive. This is an important point that often gets lost. Estate tax exemptions do not help someone open a restaurant, keep a hardware store afloat, or expand a family-owned shop. They primarily benefit those with massive accumulated wealth that is transferred across generations, reinforcing economic inequality over time. If this kind of clarity matters to you, make sure you subscribe so you can stay informed without the spin. What makes this exchange especially consequential is what happens on the other side of the ledger. To offset these tax cuts, the same legislation proposes nearly $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. According to the Congressional Budget Office, more than 15 million Americans would lose health insurance as a result. Independent academic studies from institutions like Yale and the University of Pennsylvania estimate that coverage losses on this scale could lead to roughly 50,000 additional deaths each year. These are not abstract numbers. These are people delaying care, skipping medications, or being forced to choose between rent and treatment. Sanders put that moral trade-off directly on the table. Is it worth cutting health care for millions so a few hundred families can receive enormous tax advantages after death? He argued that this is not just an economic debate, but a moral one, and he pressed Bessent repeatedly to justify it. Bessent ultimately could not. Instead, he deflected to past Democratic failures to raise taxes on billionaires, a response that did not address the specific policy under discussion. And that moment is telling because it reflects a broader pattern in Washington where the consequences of legislation are often obscured by partisan talking points rather than confronted head-on. If you want more coverage that connects the dots between policy decisions and real human consequences, don't forget to subscribe to the channel right now. This hearing matters because it lays bare the priorities behind the numbers. Tax policy is not just about percentages and revenue. It is about who bears risk, who receives protection, and whose lives are treated as expendable in the pursuit of economic ideology. As debates over taxes and healthcare continue, this exchange will likely be remembered as a moment when the stakes were laid out plainly. Billions for the wealthiest Americans on one side, and life or death consequences for millions of working-class families on the other. We will continue to follow this story closely and break down what it means for you and your community. Make sure you are subscribed so you stay ahead of the headlines and understand what is really happening behind closed doors.